I still hear those words in my head every time I drive past the old oak tree at the edge of my property. Dad, I already sold the farm. For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard him. Then I looked at my own son, and he wasn't nervous. He wasn't ashamed. He looked proud. That was the moment I realized the boy I spent my life raising believed I was nothing more than an obstacle standing between him and money. If stories about family, betrayal, and hard-earned justice mean something to you, I'd appreciate you subscribing to Behind Dad. Every story here reminds us that the people closest to us can sometimes leave the deepest scars. And one quick note before we continue. The faces, photos, background footage, and scenes you see throughout this video are simply visual representations to help tell the story. They're meant for storytelling and imagination, not to depict the real people involved. I'm 68 years old. I've lived on that farm since I was 12. My father built the first barn with his own hands. My grandfather planted the apple orchard before I was even born. My wife and I raised our only son there. Every fence post, every field, every patch of dirt carried memories that no amount of money could ever replace. After my wife, Linda, passed away from cancer 4 years earlier, the farm became more than a home. It became the only place where I still felt close to her. Every morning, I drank coffee on the same porch where we used to watch the sunrise together. Every evening, I'd stop by the small oak tree where we scattered part of her ashes. That land wasn't property. It was my family. My son, Eric, knew that better than anyone. At least, I thought he did. Over the last couple of years, Eric had started talking differently. Dad, developers are buying farms everywhere. You could retire. You're working too hard. That land is worth millions. At first, I thought he was simply worried about me. I stared at the papers until the words blurred together. The buyer's name meant nothing to me, but the signature at the bottom did. It looked like mine. My hands started shaking. I never agreed to this. Eric leaned back in the chair like he had already won. You signed the authorization papers a few weeks ago, Dad. I told you they were estate documents. Legally, everything's done. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you tricked me? No, he answered with a shrug. I protected you from yourself. That sentence hurt more than the forged-looking paperwork. He actually believed he was the hero. He walked through the house talking about retirement communities, investment accounts, and vacations I could finally enjoy. He spoke as if the farm had always been a burden instead of the place that gave my life purpose. Then he looked straight at me and said something I'll never forget. Mom would have wanted you to stop living in the past. The room went silent. He had used his own mother's memory to justify selling the land where she wanted to be buried. I wanted to throw him out. Instead, I simply whispered, "Leave." He grabbed his keys, smiled one last time, and said, "You'll thank me eventually." The front door closed. I stood there for nearly 10 minutes without moving. Then I walked outside to the old oak tree where Linda's ashes rested beneath the grass. I failed him, I whispered. For the first time since losing my wife, I felt completely alone. That evening I called the only person I trusted, my attorney, Daniel. He had handled our family's legal work for over 20 years. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. Finally he asked, "Did you read everything before signing?" I closed my eyes. "No, I was afraid you'd say that." My heart sank. Then his voice changed. "But I also know something your son may have forgotten." I held my breath. The farm isn't owned the way he thinks it is. I didn't understand what he meant. The evening of Eric's party, I parked my old pickup across the street and just sat there for a minute. Music echoed through the neighborhood. Luxury SUVs lined both sides of the road. People walked toward the backyard carrying expensive bottles of wine and wrapped gifts. They thought they were celebrating a smart business deal. I knew they were about to witness the biggest mistake of my son's life. When I walked through the gate, Eric spotted me immediately. He came over with a huge grin and threw an arm around my shoulder. "I knew you'd come around, Dad." I forced a smile. I wouldn't miss it. He laughed, completely unaware of what was waiting for him. The backyard looked nothing like the place where he grew up. Caterers served steak and seafood. A live band played country music. People kept congratulating him for turning an old farm into real money. Every compliment felt like another knife in my chest. One man even shook my hand. "You must be proud of your son." I looked him in the eye and quietly replied, "You'll understand soon enough." He looked confused, but before he could ask anything else, I walked away. If you had been standing where I was, Would you have exposed your own child in front of everyone? Or try to protect him one last time? I kept asking myself that question. Then my phone vibrated. It was Daniel. Everything is ready, he said. You can make the call. I looked across the yard at Eric, who had climbed onto a small stage with a microphone. He tapped the mic and smiled at the crowd. I just want to thank everyone who believed in me. This deal changed my life. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Then I told Daniel, do it. Less than 30 seconds later, Eric's phone rang. He smiled when he saw the caller ID. It's probably another investor, he joked. He answered without leaving the stage. Hello. The smile disappeared almost instantly. His face turned pale. What? The music stopped. Guests looked at each other. Eric swallowed hard. Eric climbed down from the stage like his legs no longer belonged to him. Every conversation in the backyard stopped. The same people who had been cheering for him just minutes earlier stepped back in silence. A few quietly picked up their coats and headed for the gate. Nobody wanted to be standing next to a man who might have committed fraud. He walked toward me with tears filling his eyes. Dad, please tell them this is a misunderstanding. I looked at him for a long moment before answering. No, son. The misunderstanding started the day you believed my signature mattered more than my trust. Daniel arrived a few minutes later with copies of the legal documents. He explained that years before Linda passed away, we had placed the farm into a family trust. I could manage the property, but no one, not even me, could sell it without following the conditions we had agreed on together. The papers Eric tricked me into signing never gave him the authority he claimed to have. The buyers canceled the deal before sunrise the next morning. Eric spent months dealing with lawsuits, legal bills, and the humiliation of explaining to everyone why the sale had collapsed. I never celebrated his downfall. Watching your own child face the consequences of his choices isn't a victory. It's a heartbreak no father ever wants. About a year later, Eric showed up at the farm alone. No expensive truck. No designer clothes. He walked to the old oak tree where his mother's ashes rested and broke down crying. I wasn't trying to steal from you, he whispered. I got greedy, and I convinced myself it was love. That was the first honest sentence I'd heard from him in a very long time. I forgave him, but forgiveness didn't erase the damage. Trust had to be earned back one day at a time, and that took years. If stories where karma, justice, and family emotions come together are the kind you enjoy, you'll probably like my other channel, Karma by